All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on another edition of the Franchise Your Business webinar and podcast series. My name is Tom Dufour. I am the founder and CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team. And just as an intro here, for those who are new or this might be your first time signing up or checking out this program, this session we've done monthly since for over 4 years. We've been doing this, and we look at macroeconomic data and trends, starting with macroeconomic data into business, small business data, into franchise related data. So we kind of start wide and start to narrow in. And really just to provide you with some context, and some information to say how the current market conditions might be impacting your business positively or negatively or neither, or just maybe trying to get a sense of the general consumer out there. So what I will do is I'm going to share my screen for those of you that will end up watching this video. If you're listening to audio, you can just do your best to check this out. We do try to include the links that we're referring to in the show notes so that you can go ahead and see those. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and get this show started here. Okay, so the first report we take a look at is from the Institute for Supply Management. They do a report on business called the Manufacturing PMI, or the Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, and it's at 47.2%. For the month of September. And it reads in this paragraph, the U.S. manufacturing sector contracted for the sixth consecutive month in September as the manufacturing PMI registered 47.2%, the same reading as in August, after breaking a 16-month streak of contraction by expanding in March. The manufacturing sector has contracted the last 6 months. Of the 5 sub-indexes that directly factor into the manufacturing PMI, only one, supplier deliveries, was in expansion territory, and the same in August. So what it's saying is basically it's unchanged month over month from August and September, or the same number, the same reading. And what does that mean? Well, maybe it just is kind of flatlining where it's at. On this report, anything under 50% shows that the manufacturing economy is generally contracting below 50%. And then the general economic or general broad economy break-even line is 42.5%. So it's your business. If you're feeling or noticing that things might feel a little tight in the business, or tighter than normal, or it has been, there's probably good reason. And we're seeing this occur in the manufacturing. Purchasing is slowing down by the manufacturing purchasers, which, by the way, these manufacturing purchasers, these are folks that are thinking about, they're anticipating demand. So they're doing their best estimate to anticipate demand. So good sense. So the second report we take a look at is the Institute for Supply Management report on business. They do a report, services PMI, and it shows it's at 54.9%. And so the paragraph reads, in September, the services PMI registered 54.9%, a 3.4 percentage point increase compared to the August reading of 51.5%. This is the index's highest level since a figure of 55% in February of 2023. A reading above 50% indicates the services sector economy is generally expanding, and below 50% indicates it is generally contracting. Okay. So as we take a look at this, and it says one other thing at the last, second to last sentence. It says a services PMI above 49% over time generally indicates an expansion of the overall economy. So this is a nice surge to see this trend upward for services, as the American economy is primarily a services-driven economy in the world we're in right now. So that to me just means that things on the services side seem to be trending upward, which is likely a positive indicator for what we're going to see in hopefully the coming fourth quarter here, now that we're almost a month through the first month of the fourth quarter. Okay, the next chart we look at is the Institute for Supply Management Report on Business. This analysis is by Nancy Lemaster. I should have said who it was by before. The analysis for the services PMI was by Steve Miller, and the manufacturing PMI was by Timothy R. Fiore. So we'll go back to the hospital PMI for the Purchasing Managers Index, and it reads, the second paragraph, the hospital PMI registered 55% in September, a 3.6 percentage point decrease from the August reading of 58.6%, indicating a 13th consecutive month of growth after a contraction in August of 2023. So as we look at the report, and this report is their newest report, by the way, the hospital PMI, and you can see there are a lot bigger zigs and zags on this report. And what I've noticed in evaluating and assessing this report, the hospital PMI seems to spike and see some peaks and valleys based on seasonality of flus and viruses and things going around. It tended to see that have seemed like there's some correlation there. But it's just interesting to note to see what's going on in hospital as the medical industry and healthcare industry continues to just grow in size in terms of the percentage of overall impact on the overall U.S. economy. So as we look at these three reports, hospital, services, and manufacturing, manufacturing's contracting, it's below. Services is growing and saw a nice bump last month. And hospital declined from the previous month. However, it's still in a growth territory. So mixed results there. Okay, next up is the U.S. unemployment rate. And so we'll take a look at this is from tradingeconomics.com, the United States employment rate that it shows, or excuse me, unemployment rate. And it shows September 2024, the unemployment is at 4.1%. And we've seen this steady incline pretty much all year. January was 3.7%. You can see here February 3.9%. We thought, well, is that an anomaly because it dropped to 3.8% in March? But no, then it just kind of kept on ticking up here all the way to July at 4.3%. Ticked down in August, 4.2, and 4.1 in September. And the paragraph reads that the unemployment rate in the United States fell to 4.1% in September 2024, the lowest in 3 months, down from 4.2% in the previous month, and surprising market expectations, which had forecasted the rate to remain unchanged. The number of unemployed individuals decreased by 281,000 to 6.834 million, while employment levels increased by 430,000 to 161.864 million. Meanwhile, the labor force participation rate was steady at 62.7%, and the employment population ratio increased to 60.2% from 60%. Okay, so all things being considered, this is positive. More people in labor participation rate remaining the same, more people employed with a decrease in unemployment. I think that's a positive reading. Not a huge jump, not a huge change, but still trending in the right direction, and see where that goes at the end of October. Next up is the U.S. inflation rate. This is from tradingeconomics.com, the United States inflation rate and CPI. And it reads the annual inflation rate in the U.S. slowed for a sixth consecutive month to 2.4% in September of 2024, the lowest since February 2021 from 2.5% in August. However, figures came above forecasts of 2.3%. So I think that's worth noting that it was higher than was expected. So you can still see, though, that this trend is declining, which is nice to see when we have those high inflationary periods. Remember, what this showing is a 12-month. Let me see if I can go to, here's a 5-year that if I zoom out here, you can see the 5-year where, well, actually I need to go to 10-year, and you can see, pre-2020, 2021, really, if you take a look here, you can see prior to, 2016, 17, 18, 19, it's at right around 2 to 3%, below 2%, before that 2015, 2016, well below 2%. Then it was consistently for about 4 years under that. And then inflation fell in 2020, pretty low, below 2%, and then it just that huge rise for all of 21, 22, 23, and most of this year. Really, still very high inflationary times. And remember, the inflation rate is growth over that same month the previous year. So to me, that's the big thing. So when you're looking at September of 24 at 2.4%, that's over September of 23. Let me show that, which was 3.7%, over the September before, which was 8.2% growth. So remember, this is compounding, right? So this is what this literally explains and showcases when you think of this as compounding the prices. This is what consumers are feeling. So this is what most households are feeling across the country, from what I've gathered and heard, and even in our own home, seen that everything costs more. It from groceries and on, and the cost, the inputs went up, and businesses pass that on to the consumer. So ultimately, the consumer generally ends up feeling the pinch the most, which is all of us. All of us are the general consumer. Okay. So by the way, and if you're feeling that in your own business where maybe profit margin isn't quite where it used to be, you might need to look at raising your prices. Or if you've bumped your prices, you still might be feeling the pinch a little bit, just because maybe revenue might be down a little bit. Maybe customers are not, maybe the frequency at your business might not be as frequent, or maybe a canceled subscription rate went up a little bit higher. So these are things, by the way, that your franchisees are going to be feeling as well, or maybe even concerned about in terms of buying a franchise. So when you're thinking about it, be thinking about how you would answer this or explain this to a prospective franchise buyer, or maybe even helping your current franchisees in your network. Okay. It's hard not to talk about inflation because even if you don't understand it, even if you're not sure what it is, most people who just buy anything can feel it and can see that. Okay, next up is the surveys of consumers from the University of Michigan. I really like this report. It shows the index of consumer sentiment. So I'm going to pull up the last 50 years. I like the bigger, broader chart. I'll zoom in on this. Okay, and so it shows here that if we arrow over, you can see starting back around 2022, 23, you can see it bottomed out, and it's just kind of been this steady rise. You can kind of see these big zigs up, and then a little zig down, and then a zig up, and then a zig down, but it's not zigging down or zagging down as much as it previously was. And so we saw a big spike earlier this year, and it's zigged down, but still kind of in line with where it was back in 2023. So you can see here in 2024, it's looking like it's around 70. Let me pull up the 10-year to see if I can get a better read on that. Oh yeah, this is going to be a little bit easier to get an assessment on what the actual number is. The blue line is the 3-month moving average, which I like, kind of makes some of the jumps a little smoother. So you can see this around 70 index value here. But you look at bottoming out in 22, a big spike at the beginning of 24. It fell down middle of the year, and now it's kind of coming back up here as we're coming out of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter. Okay, next up is one of my favorite statistics to look at, which is the business formation statistics. So I will zoom in, see if I can, there we go. So this report shows the total number of new business startups across the country. It aggregates data from all of the various states to show how many new businesses started in the previous month. So it shows in September of 2024, there were 426,170 new business applications filed across the country. And it was down 1.3% from August of 2024. But this number still remains consistent, which is that it has been over 400,000 new business startups for over 3 years. coming up, maybe actually 4 years, roughly, that it's been over that. Um, and to me, that's significant because you can see, if you're not looking at this on the screen, uh, prior to 2020, it was hovering right around or just below 300,000 new business startups across the country from the start of about 2018, all of 2018 and all of 2019, bouncing right around just under or over 300,000 new business startups. COVID hits, and then by mid 2020, we see these big spikes, and it's been at or right around or over 400,000 new startups. I mean, that's a significant jump. And what does that mean? Well, to me, it says people have startup business or business startup on their mind. They have entrepreneurial thoughts going on. So if you're thinking, if you're franchising your business, you have prospective buyers, you need to assume they're going to start a business. So if you need to create value to show why this prospective buyer needs to start your franchise is the business they're going to start, and not some other business, which they might just start on their own or buy another franchise, whatever that reasoning might be. So just keep that perspective in mind as you're going through that. Okay, next up is the Small Business Index. This is the quarter 3, the 2024 Q3 report. This is presented by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and MetLife. And they do an annual, where's the report? Oh, it looks like here we go. Okay, we're back. So this quarter, it says, it reads on the uschamber.com website for the SBI index summary. It's the Q3 2024 SBI at 70.2%. This quarter, the MetLife and U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Index is 71.2, similar to last quarter's score of 69.5, and with sentiments from this time last year at 69.2. It says 84% of small business owners feel that partisan gridlock is a serious problem in the federal government. That's interesting. Part of the survey. Wonder if that's impacted at all from the federal election that's going just about to happen. So we look here at this survey report. It goes back to Q4 of 2020. This report was down to 52.9. You can see this trend, just kind of this slow, steady rise over the last almost 4 years, 3 years coming up, or 4 years, and it's at 71.2. And in Q4 of last year was 61.3, and it's 71.2. So it's up 10 points from there on this index score. So overall, I think that's positive. That means small businesses are feeling a little bit better about things. Okay, this next report is on Vistage.com. This is a Wall Street Journal and Vistage small business report that's put out. So this is the Small Business CEO Confidence Index. So this WSJ Vistage Small Business CEO Confidence Index is calculated from responses to a set of 6 questions about the current and future state of the U.S. economy, revenue and profitability projections, and hiring and investment plans. Measured over time, the index reflects trends in the U.S. economy. And so it shows that in September, the reading was 92.9. August was 83.8, so a big jump up from August. And you see this 92.9 is the highest reading since February, March of 2023. And it's really the highest. Those 2 months plus this month are the highest readings since back in February or March of 2022. So it's been 2.5 years since we've really, 1 year and then 2 years since that. So I think it's just worth noting. This is showing the all-time report. Again, seeing the trend up is very positive. You see it's still, it's just getting to kind of where the bottom was pre-COVID for the 8 years or so pre-COVID. This 92.9 gets us back to kind of where the bottom of the sentiment was during that window. So I think that's all in all a positive thing. Okay, next up, I like to take a look at franchiseinsights.com. This is called the Small Business Sentiment Index. And this says this is an index that analyzes budding entrepreneurs. These are people who are thinking about going into business for themselves. And it says the startup sentiment says 66% of them say now is a good time to start the business. The headline reads, concerns about funding and access to credit are finally receding among business buyers. So that was good. And I'll show you that chart here in a moment. And it says, let's see, almost 93% see business conditions the same or better in 3 months, but concerns about political changes were elevated for the 5th consecutive month. And I'm not terribly surprised that political changes are elevating. Generally, I tend to see that as just what I tend to observe. And when we're in the midst of a presidential election cycle, it just, it dominates the news headlines. I think we all, if you're seeing even little pieces of it, it's just in front of you, constantly, I should say, this time of year. Okay, it says 89% of people expect their startups to happen within 12 months. I think that's really interesting. 28% said next month, 32.3% said in 2 to 3 months. So that means between now and the end of the year, most people are thinking about starting this business. So if you are in franchise sales or franchise marketing, you need to assume that these prospective franchisees want to get this started by the end of the year. So I would go into that assumption and maybe even building that conversation into discussions to say, well, when would you like to have this business up and operating? And they might say next, in the first quarter, second quarter next year. Say, okay, well, if we do that, then we're going to need to get all the documents signed. If you're going to end up franchising with us, you're going to need to get these documents signed and franchise fees paid and your business set up and new business company formed. All of these things that need to happen in order so that the franchisee can be up and running by their desired window. So just know that they're more likely to want to get started over the next 3 months than not, based on this survey. Okay, this is one of my favorite questions. It asks, which of these factors will have the biggest impact in the next 6 months on your decision to start a business? Number one, and it has been for many years now, is the funding or access to credit. It's at 53.1%. And that number has been coming down. So it's still more than half of the buyers or potential startup folks need access to credit. Almost 44% are saying economic climate just in general. So they're concerned about the economic climate, which is what we're talking about on this report. So a couple things to think about. One is, as a franchisor, it's important to have some kind of a solution, even if it's a third-party referral or recommendation for a prospective franchise buyer in order to get maybe a loan or some form of capital that you can refer them to, or a series of potential franchise lenders. There are some great franchise broker third-party lenders out there that broker through various banks that do great work, that specialize in this, that you can reach out to, that have been doing this through franchising for a long time. Then you have the economic climate at 43.8% is their second big concern. So I think it's important that you continue to listen to and attend sessions like this so that you understand what some of these broad economic conditions are and what they look like, so that you can have that conversation with your franchisee. I think that's really, 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 really important, or prospective franchisee. And they might not even state it to you, but I think addressing it as a solution to a problem they may not have said to you yet, but addressing it sooner rather than later will help give them reassurance that you are able to help them as the franchisor. Political changes is number 3 at 26%, so almost a quarter with political changes. And obviously, the presidential election is less than 2 weeks out now. Um, and I think as we get closer to the excitement around it continues to grow. But after the election, most of the time things chill out, and it's not as drastic of a change as anyone thinks. No matter which uh, person ends up winning the election, and things tend to chill out on that political change concern there. Okay. Full-time workers and Gen Xers are the largest cohorts of people that are thinking about starting a business. So it shows that, let's see, where is the age group and demographics? Okay, Gen X is at 45.6%, um, baby boomers at 23.3%, millennials at 24.4%. And then you have a very small percentage here with Gen Z starting to increase their interest and share of starting a business. Looks like they're at 7%. Um, but you can see the big ones, Gen X, and then boomers and millennials are pretty similar. Okay. Next up is just some reports from franchiseinsights.com. And this one is by Michael Alston for Franchise Insights. And it says, deliver a consistent flow of referrals for your franchise development website. It says 66% of portal leads visit your franchise website afterwards. So I think that's interesting. So portals sometimes get a bad rap in franchising, but this data is interesting that they can show that 2 out of every 3 leads that come from a franchise portal site will end up back at your website to check it out. And 19% that come to your website will submit a second request for information. So I think that's pretty interesting and worth noting. So, and by the way, I have no stake or vested interest in any of these franchise portals like a Franchise Insights but I do think it's worth noting. I've worked in received leads from these for many years and had clients receive leads and seen how that works. And a lot of times there are complaints about these groups. And I just think it's important finding the right mix for your brand to consider. Okay, next up are the top 10 categories. So I think this is interesting. Now, this shows business opportunity categories, but I'm pretty sure that about a year or so ago that business opportunities and the franchise data opportunities got switched because home services has been the number one category in franchising since after the COVID, since mid 2020 or so. And these categories are all consistent with franchising versus when I look at the business, the franchising, travel and lodging, it seems unlikely to me. And it seems strange that business opportunities in general would be listed here. I don't know. There are just some things on this from the franchise one that stick out to me that I don't think it's correct. I think that this one actually is the business opportunity one is what the franchise actually should be, which home services is number one at 23.1%, business services at 14.5%, food is moved to number 3 on the list at 12.4%, senior and healthcare at 11.2%, cleaning and maintenance 10.7%, pet services at 7.5%, child-related franchises 3.4%, retail 3.4%, education 2.2%, and vending at 2%. Okay. All right. So that is a wrap for what I have on our session today. I don't see any questions in the comment box. If you have any questions, please feel free to type those in or unmute yourself. I'd be happy to answer those. But with that, I'd love to close this out for everyone and hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for being here with me today. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Take care.